Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind the YouTube channel and the social media pages and the website Nonconformist Conscience. Today, we have a new moon in Scorpio happening. It happened at 3:27 a.m. Central Time. So, wherever you are in the world, um, you know, you can understand when this was going down. This will be felt for the next 2 weeks, though. And it also represents a 6-month cycle of really working on the dynamics that are corresponding to what the astrology is speaking to during this new moon. So let me jump in. A new moon represents a new cycle of emotional dynamics that we are meant to be working with to understand. A new moon occurs whenever the moon and the sun are conjunct. And so this really speaks to this principle of creative self-actualization, creative self-purpose, because the sun is involved. So it's this new cycle of understanding a creative self-purpose of how we're meant to go about actualizing this right now. And so we do that through understanding the emotional dynamics that surface during this time. And so this new moon is in the sign of Scorpio. It's at 20 degrees Scorpio. And Scorpio is the archetype of confrontation and exposing emotional and psychological dynamics of where we are needing to transcend inner limitations, of understanding what our inner parameters and limitations are. It's understanding what we cannot be. And so it's this deeply psychological archetype that gets us in touch with who we are on a unique soul level. And this is because Scorpio is naturally square to the sign of Leo. So in the sign of Scorpio, we're dealing with all types of inner confrontations revolving around where we need to metamorphose our inner limitations. And so we can be dealing with all sorts of dynamics of where we've reached a limit. This is why within the sign of Scorpio, we can experience abandonment, loss, betrayal. If we're not having discernment around who we're merging with or how we're merging our, inner resources or our natural resources with another. This is about getting in touch and confronting what is hidden beneath the surface. There's always more than meets the eye within the sign of Scorpio, and it's about our soul and it's about our evolution. So we can say or assume that this new moon is going to bring up dynamics that we are wanting to confront within ourselves, where we have reached inner limitations on a psychological, emotional, maybe even physical or spiritual level. And it's so we can ask why. Scorpio is all about why. Anyone with a strong Scorpio signature, whether it be Pluto in Scorpio, lots of planets in Scorpio, or a packed 8th house, is going to be an investigator. They are someone who's wanting to understand the why of it all. It reminds me of, I have 2 kids, and my oldest is 14, but my youngest is 6, and they still are in this phase of, what does this mean? And then you answer it, and then they ask why, and then you answer that, and then they ask why. So Scorpio can have this feel to it of always wanting to ask why, to confront ever deeper layers of what we're understanding and what is known and familiar. Within the archetype of Scorpio, we're also looking at power and powerlessness. I love Jeffrey Wolf Green's teaching on this. He has talked about how power is what we've known. It's the known and the familiar. That's where we feel power. It's what we know about ourselves. It's what we've experienced. And so that is where we can feel power. And where we feel powerlessness is when we haven't experienced something, or something isn't known or familiar. And so it can induce, fear around feeling powerlessness. And this is seen with the natural square from Scorpio to Aquarius. So Scorpio is also about our desires. It is co-ruled by Mars, which is about our desires. It's like a self-cleansing oven. What we desire creates the choices that we make. And Mars is an active participant during this new moon. It is conjunct this new moon at 22 degrees. And so we are really looking at the culmination of long-standing desires, and that way we can work with new desires that are wanting to emanate. So being confronted around the limitations of our desires can be happening for some. So there's a lot of deep issues or dynamics that can be surfacing right now and being exposed within each one of us as a way to confront those limitations that they speak to. And it will be unique and different for each one of us. And I can speak to some of the things that can come up on personal levels in a very generalized sense. That way we can work with this energy. So if we think about this new moon, it's wanting us to confront inner, limitations of where we've reached a threshold, where we're wanting to evolve. We're looking at our desires and what it is we're desiring to do right now in order to evolve. And that means that it's going to correspond to what choices do we need to make right now. But this new moon is ruled by Pluto and Capricorn. And so this speaks to drawing in the energy of maybe this is some of the dynamics, this Pluto and Capricorn, of what we could be confronting and what types of limitations can be coming up for each one of us. Of course, you need to look at where all of this falls in your own chart by house, because that will give you so much more content revolving around this. But because Pluto is in Capricorn, Pluto in Capricorn on personal levels is about how we integrate our own authority within society, within social systems, within our family. And it can be extended family if you're someone who's partnered and your partner has their own family. That can be needing to be able to express your individual nature and your own inner sense of authority, and learning how to do that in a way that is, based in equality and in integrity. This can also be about confronting the limitations of where we have gotten our security needs met by giving our authority to someone else instead of meeting our own needs. So lots of stuff can be coming up pertaining to needing to confront our own limitations around judgments, self-judgment, or judging others, our own limitations around our conditioning, Pluto and Capricorn, how that has affected us on a psychological, physical, spiritual, and emotional level, and how it's affected our sense of authority or our sense of sovereignty. This is a new moon that can also bring up confrontations around discernment, whether it be sexual or discernment around partnerships. And because the South Node is in Libra, this can be any type of relationship. It's a variety of relationships. Although this new moon is in Scorpio, this is more dealing with our own inner psychological and emotional limitations pertaining to external relationships. So it's having us question and excavate these inner dynamics of how am I? How do I show up in the world? How am I as my own authority? Am I able to be my own authority? Am I able to discern whom to trust, whom not to, whom to be in relationship with, whom not to? And it's looking at the why of it all. Why have I done X, Y, and Z? And now I'm being confronted with the consequences of that, whether it be a positive consequence or a negative consequence. It's this confrontation of all of these inner limitations that can be coming up as a way for us to transcend them, as a way to metamorphose them. It's about looking at what do we want to merge with? What do we feel like we need to merge with? Is it a person? Is it a body of knowledge? Is it, maybe someone's wanting to merge with tarot or astrology as a way to learn more about themselves and to confront inner dynamics. That way they can metamorphose those limitations through merging with those external things of a taboo nature. For some, on a more mundane level, this can be wanting to merge with money or how society views you, all of this. But it's looking at where we feel power, where we feel powerlessness, and what are the limitations within those dynamics. This is also about taking a stance on being able to understand what constitutes your state of inner security. Do you need to do something to step outside of your own inner status quo because it's reached a limitation? That can be another dynamic that comes up with this new moon being ruled by Pluto in Capricorn. So lots of looking at and confronting and exposing where we're stagnating right now. We've been doing tremendous work. The astrology has reflected this. We just came out of eclipse season, and this new moon says to commit. Scorpio is the archetype of commitment. So if you're wanting to commit to your own personal growth, this is a great time to really, really dig in and to take responsibility for your own evolutionary growth right now, especially if you felt a bit of stagnation as of lately. So this new moon is also opposing Uranus and Taurus, and this is in a gibbous opposition. So a gibbous opposition is where it's a transitionary phase. We're needing to throw off or oppose some type of dynamic as a way to transition, as a way to self-improve. It has a Virgo-like feel to it on some levels. And so with this new moon in a gibbous phase opposition to Uranus and Taurus, and Uranus is retrograde, we can be re-experiencing emotional and psychological dynamics that have affected our relationship to ourselves that we're needing to expose and confront. This can be dealing with our self-esteem. This can be dealing with how we have over-identified with events that have happened in the past, maybe of a traumatic nature, that have affected our sense of self-worth and self-esteem. And now it's created a limitation. This can be looking at, am I projecting old trauma onto relationships right now? And this is about really throwing off these dynamics as you confront them and staying in objectivity as a way to discern what it is that and where it is that we've reached a limitation from prior events. This can also be the need to liberate from staying in our hidey hole. It's Taurus, you know, maybe we're needing to go out into the world and experience more interpersonal relationships because there's stagnation, because we can reach a limitation whenever we're concentrating on ourselves for too long. It doesn't mean that we're supposed to quit concentrating on ourselves, but maybe you're someone who hasn't been socially interacting right now, and you're in a cocoon state, and you're needing to go out into the world as a way to take in more information so you can get out of yourself for just a little bit, and it can perpetuate evolution. On the flip side, this can be the need to throw off where we haven't been self-reliant, where we have been relying on others too much. So it can manifest in a couple of different ways, but we are really, again, this is a transitionary phase that is wanting us to throw something off that has reached a limitation through that opposition, and where we need to integrate what we're learning about ourselves as we throw these dynamics off. This is also about, you know, Mars is in conjunction with this new moon. It's in a balsamic phase, and it's also in a full phase opposition to this Uranus as well. And so there can be this need to really culminate pre-existing desires that have already been acted on, or needing to make a choice on desires that we haven't acted on before. And then to look at how our choice making around what we've desired prior to has affected us. Has it created some type of inner limitation? Are there lessons in being responsive and not reactive, about needing to discern what it is you're desiring to act on? Is it something you should be? With Uranus in a full phase opposition to Mars in the sign of Scorpio, it's really important, especially because Uranus is retrograde right now, that we pay attention to our repeating thoughts, that are these new ideas that are resurfacing, coming out of nowhere, that keep repeating. This can really point to what it is we're desiring to do on a soul level that gets us out of, you know, the well. It helps us to go out into the world and to act on certain things. And by acting on these certain things that we're having ideas about or thoughts about, what we're desiring to do, it then helps to help for us to understand more about our limitations through acting on these desires. So that can be a green light to act on something. If you have a repeating idea or repeating thought, it's something that can be emanating from your soul as a way to propel your evolution. And, you know, evolution happens because we confront all different dynamics in ourselves, and how we do that is through the action of making choice through our desires. So then we have, I'm thinking about what I want to talk about next. Uranus is in Taurus, and it's ruled by this Venus in Libra. And this Venus in Libra, especially if you have been cocooning yourself and not really socially interacting, it can get you out into the world and to experience, you know, different relational dynamics as a way to understand if there's any type of imbalances within your conditioning of how you do relationships. So there's even confrontation or exposing of these types of dynamics. You know, the asteroid Kali is in a balsamic conjunction to Venus, and it pulls in the energy of this Uranus and Jupiter as well. And then this Venus is also the South Node ruler. And because Kali is conjunct this Venus, it's really beneficial. It's beneficial in helping us culminate old relational dynamics of where there have been imbalances. Kali is the dark mother, which can sound really demonizing, but Kali to me has a Pluto-like feel to her. The dark mother actually to me represents and reflects where we can really nurture ourselves by facing the darker shadow parts of ourselves, by exposing it. And Kali helps to cut away this through bringing awareness around exactly what these dynamics are that are needing to be removed or released or confronted. And there's this nurturing quality through the awareness that comes. And Kali is this shamanist, principle of keen wisdom and insight. It gets us in touch with our nature on a soul level. So there can be all of these dynamics that are surfacing, revolving around our relational dynamics. This has been happening for quite some time. It's going to continue to happen with this nodal axis being Libra Aries. But Kali here really helps us to have discernment and awareness around how maybe our prior dynamics that have been of a traumatic nature and have affected our sense of knowing who we are or how we've abandoned ourselves. This awareness can really help us to culminate these desires as we these issues as we confront them. We also have this Venus Kali conjunction and a crescent sextile to Mercury. And to me, this represents really expanding upon the information and messages we receive through the keen wisdom that is bestowed to us at this moment as we're confronting all of these dynamics during this new moon. And Mercury in Sagittarius, who is ruled by Jupiter retrograde in the sign of Taurus, is really wanting us to continue to expand upon what we value, what we've come to believe about ourselves. Is it a truth or is it an untruth? It's as we, with the crescent phase sextile between Mercury and the Venus Kali conjunction, we can really expose the old messages that have affected our sense of self and what beliefs we've bought into that we're wanting to release right now. And then to expand upon and integrate new personal truths as we get rid of the old. We can be coming to understand the truth about relational dynamics of where imbalances are occurring. Maybe you've abandoned yourself and you're wanting to understand why this is occurring. And this is a new moon that can really help you understand the why. And then to help you have a framework for what you need to expand upon. This is about getting in touch with your inner vibration and your inner magnetism. And as we confront all of this stuff that's surfacing, it clears room and it changes our inner vibration so we can then attract new relationships or our tribe of people that are resonating on the same frequency of us as ourselves. Jupiter is the ruler of this Mercury, and Jupiter is in a gibbous opposition to the asteroid Lilith. Lilith is in the sign of Scorpio as well. And Lilith is, I've spoken about this many of times, it is our most primal nature. In the myth, Lilith refused to lay beneath Adam and she refused to submit. And this really reflects the archetype of not submitting to the patriarchy. And because she didn't submit, she stayed whole unto herself. And so this is really an archetype of reclaiming your nature, who you are on a core level, on a soul level. And Lilith in the sign of Scorpio is no bullshit. She wants to confront and expose all of the dynamics that keep us from knowing our true selves. And so with this gibbous opposition between Lilith in the sign of Scorpio, ruled by Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, and Jupiter, she's opposing Jupiter retrograde in Taurus, which is ruled by this Venus that is conjunct Kali. There's like this amazing goddess energy that's helping us to reconnect with ourselves. So the gibbous opposition from Lilith to Jupiter is really helping us to expose old beliefs that have affected our self-worth and self-esteem, that have prevented us from staying whole into ourselves. And so there's this reclaiming of this that can happen. And it's about throwing off and challenging these old beliefs. They can be others' projected beliefs onto us, others' projected expectations, seeing as Venus is the ruler of this Jupiter. And these are dynamics that are resurfacing and recycling as a way for us to resolve them. So we can be understanding why in a relationship we lost our authority, seeing as, you know, Lilith is ruled by this Pluto in Capricorn, where we gave over our authority, where we lost sight of our own sovereignty, where we bought into the illusion that we aren't whole into ourselves, where maybe we abandoned ourselves, where maybe when we experience traumatic events of loss, abandonment, and betrayal, we're learning the lessons of discernment, learning the lessons of discerning who am I as opposed to who someone else is. What will I stand for? What will I not? This is helping us to understand our values and our needs. And there is a really big dynamic of the need to be self-reliant right now, to expose areas of where we're not remaining in self-reliancy. This new moon is teaching us about how we can be interdependent in relationships and stay whole unto ourselves. And Kali is semi-sextile this Lilith, so is Venus, and it pulls in that Jupiter that's in Taurus ruled by this Venus. And so there can be so much wisdom that we can gain through just having the courage to look beneath the surface, the courage to expose ourselves, maybe the parts of ourselves that we don't really want to expose, maybe things that we're afraid to look at, to pull the curtain back regarding our relationship to ourselves. There's this need to really be honest with ourselves. And whenever we're honest with ourselves, we can transcend those limitations of where maybe our survival instinct kicked in the past. And so we did things out of survival, seeing as there's a strong Taurus dynamic happening with this new moon as well. So asking ourselves, this Mercury in Sag, ruled by Jupiter and Taurus, are power players in this conversation happening during this new moon. So it's like wanting to understand the truth, wanting to understand our own truth, who we are, wanting to understand where we've bought into delusions that are untruths. And there's a lot of deep understanding that can happen with the Sag energy. It keeps this lighthearted, like the proverbial keyhole of light, or the light at the end of the tunnel, or that feeling of, I know this is happening for some reason, even if I can't understand it, and there's a lesson in this. And so with Jupiter being a power player as well within this astrology of the new moon, there can be something that we're needing to give up in order to receive the Jupiterian gift. So maybe that's some dynamic about ourselves that we've become overly identified with, even if it's negative. And so really paying attention to how do you talk to yourself? That's going to really key or clue you in on what might need to be released, and understanding where does this come from, the why of it, and confronting it. Okay. Sorry, I'm wanting to make sure I cover all of my bases here for us. So I've been talking about this for a while too, with Pluto being ruled by Saturn and Pisces right now, and Saturn just stationed direct. I wrote about all of this last week. I will post a link of last week's written report. I didn't do a video last week, but I did do a written report, and I can I'll post a link to it in the description, as well as this week's written, well, not this week's written report, but the new moon report. That really goes deep into this, and I go deep into the archetype of Scorpio. But if we're wanting to understand and confront our own personal limitations around how we are with authority, or how we're able to integrate our own unique sense of self, or so our own inner authority within different systems, and we're looking at how we enact our own authority within relationships. Is it authoritative? Are we oppressive of others? Or do we keep experiencing dynamics of feeling oppressed? Saturn, the ruler of this Pluto, it stationed direct last week. And so during the time it was retrograde, there was a lot of information we were gathering around the confrontation of how we've structured our reality through the conditioning of our ideals. What ideals have been conditioned? How has this affected your sense of self-worth? How has this affected what you know to be true? Are there illusions and delusions you bought into? How did that affect you? Is there something there that you're needing to confront? This is because all of these dynamics are wanting to culminate right now. You know, Saturn is in a last quarter square to Mercury in the sign of Sag. And so there can be an immense amount of tension around, what do I believe right now? What can I have faith in, Pisces? What gives me meaning? Is it an illusion? Is it a delusion? And there's, within this last quarter square between Saturn and Mercury, there's this need to really not only look and expose our ideals, but to then redefine, what do you value? With this last quarter square, we can be really learning about more natural values and needs as we're dissolving the old temporal man-made structures. This can be about finding a body of knowledge to understand yourself on a deeper level, and wanting to merge with it, especially because of this new moon in Scorpio, as a way to osmose this information so you can transcend limitations. Saturn in Pisces really speaks to transcending our limitations around how we've structured reality. And with this last quarter square to Mercury from Saturn, there's a need to redefine how we structure reality. So we do that through seeking out new information and then expanding upon it. So as we're culminating these old dynamics and we're confronting them and the limitations that they hold within them, especially around man-made structures, constructs, laws, taboos, we're then needing to put into place new ways of understanding ourselves, our authentic nature, our values, everything. But with the last quarter square, there can be tension around what do I believe in? And there's this need to act on seeking out what feels true for yourself as opposed to what has just been learned or imprinted. And so the catch-22 with the last quarter square is there can be stagnation because of the known and familiar way. And so wanting to continue to believe in what you've always believed in, even though it's creating a limitation. And this really says there needs to be a willingness to act on the need to seek out new information that feels true to you, that gives new meaning to life, that you can osmose and merge with, that then helps you metamorphose old limitations held within. And this can really get you in touch with who you feel to be true, like who you know as yourself to be true, this recovering process of it. I can give my own personal example of this on some type of level of experiencing this. I really, especially because there's this Scorpio new moon, and it's, really indicates that when we go out and seek new information and it gives us new meaning, not only does it help us confront old dynamics, it helps us metamorphose through osmosing that body of knowledge within us. And then because we give it meaning, what we give meaning to creates what we value, and what we value creates what we need. And so there's this transformative dynamic that can happen during this new moon of really changing our relationship to self, and through seeking out this information, helping us to really become more inwardly secure and self-reliant. But my own particular example for this is and I've said it on here a few times, I feel like, but I had been in therapy since I was 12. I got in therapy during, one of my big Jupiter transits, and I really thrived in therapy. I loved traditional therapy for a long time. It's probably because I have a lot of Scorpio. Got booted off, but I'm back on. But because I have a lot of Scorpio, I was really interested in understanding my inner psychology and the why of everything. Like, why am I experiencing this? Why is this happening? Why do I feel this way? Who am I? Why? So I also worked in mental health, and it was all of these traditional types of therapeutic modalities. I live in a very consensus place. I was always attracted to astrology, but didn't even know that it could be a career because of where I live. And at a certain point, I reached a limit with traditional therapy. It really benefited me for a long time, but I capped out. And so then in true Sag form, I went seeking information so I could understand myself, because on some level I felt like I just wasn't getting what I needed. I felt that inner limitation that I wanted to confront. And then I found a body of knowledge called evolutionary astrology. And as I learned about it, I learned so much about myself that it helped me metamorphose my inner limitations that for, over 18 years I couldn't in traditional therapy. It gave me language and awareness and understanding about those inner limitations. And it was through me osmosing the body of work, the body of knowledge of evolutionary astrology. And obviously I haven't osmosed everything. I don't think I will in this lifetime. It would take me a few lifetimes, but this can be that dynamic that can be happening during this new moon, like this feeling of stagnation, of there's something more, there's something I'm supposed to be learning, there's something about myself that I'm supposed to be learning. And Sag, Mercury and Sag, ruled by a Jupiter, gets us asking and seeking the truth of a situation. And you throw that in with Scorpio, it's having us really excavate and pull back the curtain on these limitations and understanding that there's something more to be discovered here. There's something here that on a soul level is wanting to be known in order for it to be alchemized, to metamorphose. And so there's these dynamics that can be happening, especially if you've had a lot of relational dynamics happening in your life right now, and you're kind of over it, and you're wanting to know, why is this occurring? The thing that can help you confront yourself can be wanting to seek out the truth. And when you have a sincere intention, Saturn, Pisces, squaring this Mercury and Sag, this can be revealed to you. The path can be shown. What direction are you supposed to go on? What are you supposed to be merging with in order to understand yourself, on a deeper level? And then we, like I said, we have this goddess energy with Kali and Lilith that's helping us really return back to our center, back to understanding who we are in a very natural sense before things got distorted. I'm not saying that this is going to happen all of a sudden. This is a marathon, not a sprint, but this can really catapult these dynamics. And so if there's something that you're wanting to follow, something you're wanting to learn, something you're desiring to learn, right? These are the things that you are meant to be acted on, that can help you understand the why of what's occurring in your life, can help you learn about how to make correct judgment, how to discern, how to feel like a natural authority, how to ask and answer your own questions, how to be in relationships that are rooted in equality and giving and sharing. And this is a new moon that'll expose all of the dynamics of where we are in alignment with that, where we're not in alignment with being whole into ourselves. And the last thing I'm going to say is Neptune, the ruler of this Saturn, is in a disseminating trine to this new moon. And this gives a Sag feel as well. I love disseminating trines. They have an ease of integration. You can be a little bit lazy if something gets comfortable, but Neptune and a disseminating trine with this new moon really speaks to the ability to merge with source on a deeper level, the willingness to have faith, the willingness to have healing, the willingness to be able to integrate healing, the willingness to be able to integrate self-forgiveness as you're exposing or confronting inner dynamics. The key is to not get caught up on shame, to have self-forgiveness, to seek, to understand, to not give up, to know that there are lessons as we confront inner dynamics, however they are occurring right now for you. So to me, this new moon is, honestly, I feel very powerful in the sense of getting us in touch with what it is we're supposed to understand about ourselves right now, and getting us in touch with the truth and seeking out the truth, and then osmosing some type of teaching that is going to help us continue to evolve. It gets us in touch with what we're desiring to seek out, what we're desiring to experience, gets us in touch with what choices we're wanting to make on a soul level as we confront the old and, metamorphose those old limitations. So just remember self-forgiveness, to have faith. I think with Sag, that can be a little bit easier since we have the Sag dynamic going on. And to know that we have, with this Neptune trining this, new moon, that we can really receive the messages that we're meant to receive. It can feel like our ancestors or our guardian angels or, our spirit family is really holding us in love and helping us to evolve, even if we can't see it. Pisces, Neptune. And I feel on some levels, even though this new moon is about confrontation and it can be scary on some levels because there's a need to be honest with self, there's a soul strengthening that can happen with this new moon. And there is a not only really healing quality that can be integrated from the nature of this new moon, but there's almost this ethereal sense of knowing that things are going to be okay as long as you follow your path and have a sincere intention. And so this is your new moon. Like I said, I wrote a really long new moon report. Tomorrow, I will put out this week's astrological forecast, and then I will do a video that will be out either Wednesday or Thursday. I think from now on, I'm going to do a separate new moon and full moon forecast outside of the weekly forecast. That way I can just really go deep into them. I'm a Scorpio gal. I love going deep. And if you do too, then I think that you will really enjoy that. Definitely comment. Tell me what you would like to see more of. I love interacting with you guys. And, happy new moon. And I will see you all later on this week.